So what I do here is I have, those are the productivity growth contributions of the goods producing industries to the entire economy. So, and here, therefore, I split the goods producing industries' growth contributions into those industries that are skill intensive and those who are non-skill intensive. And to determine skill intensity, we use data from the UCLAIMS database from which we can gather information on the labor composition on the sectoral level. And given this data, we can define very high skill intensive industries and those who are non-high skill intensive. And what we can see here is, for example, that in the United States, during the post-95 period, there was a very strong contribution to aggregate labor productivity growth from the skill-intensive goods-producing industries. And this contribution was about twice as high as the contribution in the German counterpart. But then, in the post-2005 period, this contribution faded a bit. It's still higher than in Germany, but no longer that high as it was post-95. For comparison, here are the results for the non-skill intensive industries, and we see that there are no really markedly differences between those industries in Germany and the US. The same what I've now done for the goods producing sectors, I can also do for services. And this provides us with a completely different picture. Here we see that the United States had a very strong increase in the labor productivity of skill-intensive services over the entire period. So, and what is very interesting for Germany, that there is a strong drag of the skill-intensive industries in the period post-95. So this is even negative. And then it's recovered a bit post-2000, but compared to the US, this contribution is negligible. So this means here in post-2000, the US had about 8 times higher productivity growth in the skill-intensive services than Germany. Here's for comparison purpose, we can see the contributions in the non-high skill intensive services, and we see that there are again no really strong differences between Germany and the US. So what I've done here is I've split the growth contribution, or I've shown the growth contribution of by sectors to the aggregate labor productivity. And what I will show in the next slide is how ICT contributed to to ALP, to labor productivity growth, separated by skill-intensive and non-skill-intensive industries. So this is what we see here. We see the skill-intensive industry productivity growth contributions for the same periods and for the ICT investments. So what is very interesting is that the US had very strong growth contributions from ICT to aggregate labor productivity post-95 and post-2000 in the skill-intensive industries. So this is a first indication that there must have been some kind of skill, what was I saying, ICT capital skill complementarity, or something that is also called the skill-biased technological change, especially with regard to ICT technology. When we now have a look at the others, so the non-skill intensive industries contribution, they are, again, not really different between Germany and the US for ICT investments. So they're quite similar, but the only markedly thing is, for example, post-95, the US also had a very strong contribution from ICT investments in the so-called non-skill intensive industries. But again, this contribution was much lower than in the skill-intensive industries. And now I just want to focus on those ICT investment contributions in the skill-intensive industries and separate this by services and goods-producing industries. This is what we have here. And we can see that the light blue bars, this is the contribution from the skill-intensive services. And this shows that they are the main drivers of the productivity growth in the US, but also in Germany. But there were a really huge contribution in the US skill-intensive services through ICT investments. We have here a little bit stronger contributions also from the goods producing skill-intensive services, but this is mainly due to the office machinery and computers industry. This is something that I will show you in the next slide, where I picked selected skill-intensive industries for the goods producing and the services sectors. And starting with the office machinery and electronic equipment industry, we see that there were very strong differences post-95. This is what I just mentioned. And that this effect is still going on even post-2000. So there's still strong contributions from those kind of industries. When we now switch to services, we see that for communications, financial intermediation, and especially business activities, the United States had completely different and much stronger growth contributions than we see this for German skill-intensive services. And this is a very interesting number here. The business activities, those are those industries that comprise rental and leasing services, computer and related activities, research and development, and other services, business services, and they comprise about 11% of value added, the total value added. And that means that this number has a real strong drag on the entire, on the aggregate labor productivity number. And here we have a very strong contribution, completely the opposite. So what we can say, concluding that there is some kind of ICT skill complementarity that seemed to be stronger in the US than it was in Germany. And some explanations for this could be that, first of all, that the US invested more in ICT. This is one very important thing. And then we have seen that the US skill-intensive industries have invested more in ICT. And this seemed to be some for my opinion, some kind of evidence for for some kind of ICT capital skill complementarity. So we have seen that there was strong productivity growth in the skill-intensive US office machinery and electronic equipment sectors, but this was very low in Germany compared to the US, and that those skill-intensive US services, especially post-2000, as they are business services, financial intermediation, and communications, contributed much stronger to the US productivity growth than in Germany. And we had this weak productivity growth in the skill-intensive services. And now we can pose the question, why is this the case? So where does it come from? Does it come from the brain drain, so that there's a lot of high-skill migration from Europe to the United States? How is this going on? Or is it due to the strong wage compression that we have in European countries, so that high-skilled people are disencouraged to work in firms in Europe compared to the US? Or is it just a measurement issue? That's something that from all the growth accounting methodology and from how one measures services industries comes from. So there are a lot of possible questions why this is the case, but nevertheless, I would say that there's some evidence, therefore, that we have some kind of ICT skill complementarity in the US that we do not see in Germany. So thank you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward for your questions.